man passed in the last 24 hours. I think it's important to share because he was important. I also think, for what it's worth, it will give people out there some insight, maybe some connection to physicians, which are actually, believe it or not, human beings. And I'm hoping it's sort of a stream of consciousness for myself to sort of resolve my tension, my dissonance, my lack of insight, maybe to myself, for myself. So there's a selfish element, and I'm going to try and be as honest about this as possible because I think that's important. I was going to have a call with the patient yesterday, and he didn't answer, which wasn't that surprising, but I had an uneasy feeling because of the way his message was, and I couldn't understand if it was my phone and my reception and connection where I am, or was it him? But I sent a few texts and I said, if you're not getting this, I'll reach out tomorrow. And today, Saturday, I believe it's April 26th, in the morning, I got up around 5. I went for a walk, a hike, uh, some time to myself. I think by around 9:30, I decided, okay, it's time to call him, which is our usual time. And I also noticed a text from a family member that's very close to this person, and I didn't open to read the text. I get overwhelmed by too many texts, and I wanted to focus on him. I called, no answer. Again, I had this funny feeling something wasn't right. So I just went ahead and called the family member, and he was very serene. You know, usually if he's calling me, we would have some, me and the patient would have some miscommunication about when our meeting was. Oftentimes it was my fault, and he would have this family member call, and I always thought that particular point about the patient was so kind and such a gesture of respect, where he didn't even want to abuse calling me directly himself. And it just always left an impression on my mind, you know, whereas other people would just call me like as if I'm their lapdog and I owe them something. Whereas, you know, this was a active patient that I was supposed to, let's say, meet with, or he thought I was going to meet on that day. Doesn't matter. He would never call me himself. So I called this family member, and he says, "Hey, Dr. Banimahd, I got some bad news." And it just kind of sort of sunk in what's going on here. And I really wanted to avoid and resist. I was resisting somewhere inside of my psyche, maybe my soul, what was coming. And, you know, the issue was declared. I want to go through almost an autobiographical stream of consciousness. Uh, 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 um, Manifesto here of me, for what that's worth. Uh, when he said this, when it was clear that the communication is the patient had passed and we didn't speak yesterday, I remember, and this is just a few hours ago this morning, I remember having this sensation as if I just got punched or kicked in my gut, and I wanted to be human and have an emotional response. And then I immediately put on the brakes and stopped myself. Now, there's some background to this. You have to remember my career spanning over many years, mainly working in very critical situations. I've probably observed dozens of deaths. I've declared dozens of passings. I've been called to the bedside to declare as a person passed or manage their medication. So it's not like, death is something that's new to me. In fact, maybe in another lifetime, or if I ever write a book, it's a very intimate reason why I went into medicine, is to be close to death for my own selfish reasons. But I remember this morning, that being said, it's not like someone's passing is not familiar grounds to me. It's not an alien issue for me. Yet I went into this human mode, very human mode, and I pulled back and I proceeded appropriately, professionally, empathetically, but holding myself steady. Um, and I've done that before in the years past, especially when I had children around me or in front of me, or I was attending to a case that was, let's say an MVA, a car accident, and parents were there. And I recall that the minute I became humanly involved in that being in front of me passing, I was not able to do my job. So I get that. And I sort of built this wall and became resilient to that kind of a human response. But that's been years. And so maybe I could have had a human response, very human response. Number two, I guess I would be a little embarrassed to say this, but as I said, I'm going to be try and be as candid and honest as possible. I don't think it's in a bad way, but the fact that he passed, I had a little bit of a professional response to it, that somewhere in between, I'm a failure and an insult to my ego, my pride, my, I guess, narcissism in my professional output. I often joke around, sometimes with students, sometimes with someone close and appropriate, and I'll say, since I've been doing substance abuse and this whole opiate epidemic thing, I have never had a patient overdose while actively under my care. If they stay there 6 months or longer, or actively under my care. And if I have, I don't know about it, but it was always some sort of a pride thing for me. And this was not necessarily an overdose, but it was uh, related to a long history of substance abuse and alcohol. And I had another one in this way, but it was, you know, under my care for about a month. And I don't count that. It was alcohol and a guy in middle age. And this wasn't an overdose, but nevertheless, he was someone that was, I knew well, and had been under my care for quite some time. And although it wasn't an overdose, it was related to substances, and maybe secondary to really a, a sort of a worn down system over years of misuse and abuse. He was not a young man, he was not an old man, but he had gone through it. Feel a little bit of shame about feeling that way, but I took it as a little bit of a somewhere between I suck, I failed, to wow, what an insult to my professional prowess, and me being such a badass and people doing so well under me. So that was another thing I felt. Then during my conversation with the family member, I found myself, uh, and maybe this is somewhat natural, but I found myself really trying to, because I've managed so many critical cases. I have a very good sense about what happens, what's possible, uh, uh, and I was trying to figure out what exactly happened by getting some details, and almost trying to, I don't know, I was maybe trying to justify things to myself that I did not fail this patient. Then I walked away. Oddly enough, I was mechanical in my conversation and dialogue to myself. I wasn't sure, even without anyone looking, how I am allowed to feel. And every minute I inched towards thinking about that really wonderful individual human being that he was, I find I found myself in hesitation and fear of evaluating him, thinking of him, constructing him for all that he was, a really neat human being that many times I was very tough on him, and yet he never knew that I would be standing back in myself thinking, you know what, man? Get yourself to where I want you to be, because you are so cool and so interesting. I just want to sit here and chat with you. And I want to hear the war stories. And sometimes I wanted to hug him because, again, he was a human being and he was a victim of circumstances, which is the usual story in the 21st and late 20th century as people head towards their demise. He was smart, he was funny, he was kind, he had a big heart. He was talented in many different ways. Yet, as much as he would say, I know that, I don't think he believed it. And I think he spent his entire adult life in the phase that you would say he was recovering, haunted by the drama and the trauma of his past. And I never got to a place where I can tell him that as a human being. And 2, 3, 4 hours later here, I'm almost like somewhat confused about my own reaction. Instead of just marching on, it has stopped me. And I'm like, maybe I'm getting old. Maybe, I don't know. Uh, I don't know. It has me thinking about all kinds of things, about how we don't honor those that have passed, our lack of connection and meaning to each other, our mechanized human interactions that will certainly contribute and have contributed to isolation, loneliness, substance abuse, mental health issues. And interestingly, this very person was all too human. And he lived in a world that I think didn't appreciate that any longer, which made him misunderstood, the odd guy out, always seeking some sort of validation from the external world. Ugh. I want to leave something positive as a takeaway from my absolute confusion and my own psyche, my own response, and my own reflection on my own life up to this point, where I want to go, how I perceive what I've spent a lifetime doing, thinking that it was good, positive work, how I sort of respond emotionally when I see people online just being rude, for it's like, even if you don't like what I say or agree with what I say, or let's say you think you caught me saying something wrong and you jump in there as if like you're in fourth grade, for some reason, all of those things are coming to the front of my mind, and I don't know. Again, I told you this is going to be sort of a stream of consciousness. But again, I want to end in a positive way. This individual, this person was special. He was important. He has passed from this realm. And if he can hear me, I want to say, um, mm, I honor and observe your life. I think your passing is important. I do know that you had a family member that dearly loved you, and I know how that is. But what you did in your life, I know, gave so much to so many people on this odd road that you took. And what I never shared with you, and I was always hoping to get you to a place where we can shoot the shit, is that this last few months, you taught me something every time we spoke. You taught me new ways of being therapeutic. You gave me new lessons in resilience. And your passing is an important event in this world. So thank you, my friend, who was my patient. And thank you for allowing me to share this about you with everyone else. I wanted to go much deeper, but I think this is about as much existential and psychological gas I have to go into depth, especially since I decided to record it on video. I hope it gives all of you something to think about as well and consider. Thank you. Peace.